Nigeria's tech startup scene can be said to have made considerable growth over the years, but this is not without its challenges. Inadequate infrastructure, lack of broadband internet, and unreliable power supply limits the growth of tech companies, thereby forcing a number of startups to outsource software development to other parts of the world. While several initiatives have focused on training software developers, it is not enough, especially when they form their own businesses. Capital is another key thing startups need, but it's also limited. With the increasing number of tech entrepreneurs, there are a growing number of seed funds providing capital to startups. The result of these types of activities is an increasing and more robust pipeline of investable companies for providers of capital. The hopes are that in the longer term, this will persuade more international investors to get interested in Nigeria.
Yes, there's a lot of funding that's coming to Nigeria. First half of this year, over $100 million. But what you're going to find with that funding is that it's only going to a specific set of people, a specific type of people. It's not spread. It's concentrated, for example, around fintech and agri-tech, which are the two priority areas now. Nothing wrong with that, but it's also concentrated at the proven, okay, those who are in growth or scale. It's not addressing the lower the ladder, the seed, and the early stage yet. So those are two. Third, if you look at professional service firms, they want to charge startups the same thing they're charging corporates. It can't work. And we have very, very few organizations such as DIY Law and the Loan Get Practice that are actually addressing startups specifically. ETF and a few others have done an amazing job, but there's still a lot to do around government policies and the kind of support systems and support infrastructure that is required to enable startups to thrive within the Nigerian early stage ecosystem.
One of the fundamental aspects of the ecosystem is the technology. Do you think we have enough proprietary solutions for that?
We don't, and we're unlikely to, simply because we don't have the research and development capacity embedded into our university systems yet. And where we do have, the transfer of technology into commercial enterprise is lacking. There are a few examples, good examples in the country, but they're few and far between. What we do need to do is understand that and start to do two things. The first is to rectify the R&D and make sure that we are actually getting commercial grade technology being developed within our university system. But the second is to understand that yes, we are a technology application environment, and what we excel in and what we are good at is actually ensuring that we take technology and we create solutions that are unique to our environment. If we buy into that paradigm, then it means we have to recognize that the hubs, the innovation hubs and technology hubs have a role to play in helping us encapsulate these technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, Internet of Things, or any of the robotics, drones, okay, for example, that we're using now in agriculture. All of these technologies need to have homes of excellence within our hub infrastructure if we are really going to rise to the challenge of technology as a solution to some of the national problems.
Some of the points you just mentioned, shouldn't it be the job of the National Information Technology Development Agency?
Well, no. Let me explain why. Netta was created to create a policy environment that would enable these things happen. The vision of Netta was not to participate as an executor within the industry. It was supposed to be a regulator that made sure that we had a balanced playing field so that a child from Aba would have STEM capacity and be able to develop just as well as a guy from Lagos or somebody from Sokoto or somebody from Abuja. It's to create those kind of policies and engage with the state governments to ensure that the policies are in place to create these enabling environments. Personally, unfortunately, I think Netta's lost its way. I don't necessarily think it is the fault of this existing administration. They were handed a misrepresentation of the original intent, and they've tried to make the best they can of it.
How do you advise Nigeria to be better prepared for the disruption ahead?
Well, like I said, the first is to understand that we didn't create these technologies. So that's sort of the first thing. If you accept that, then all of a sudden, you have an outbound responsibility. What do I mean by an outbound responsibility? It means you have to understand what is happening, where the technologies are being created, where the people do own the intellectual property. Okay, so where's IoT? Where's the center of excellence for IoT in the world? How come the Chinese, for example, right now are doing amazing things with 5G? We need to understand where these pockets, these islands of excellence are. And once we recognize that, then build the interfaces into our own environment for them so that we can enable our future generations to take advantage of those technologies to solve local problems. But as it is now, how does the kid in Maiduguri, for example, understand that virtual reality technology has just moved on to the next level where GPS coordinates can actually be fed into virtual reality directly? He doesn't have a clue.
TD, if we look at the startup ecosystem as fundamental, what are some of the ways we can ensure we build quality founders, which is now a problem as you have identified?
Okay, there are three fundamental capacities or skills or skill areas, depending on who you're talking to, that you need to have, in my opinion, as a 21st century entrepreneur. The first is the one everybody emphasizes, the tech skills. You really don't need to code, but you really, really, really need to understand exactly what technology can do, how you can use it to solve problems, and what those challenges are that you're bringing the technology application to. So the first is technology literacy, not digital literacy alone, but technology literacy. The second is a commercial understanding, the ability to understand how to turn a coin. There isn't any point creating solutions nobody wants. You need to understand marketing, you need to understand business law, you need to understand the fundamentals of cash management. And third and final, which I think is probably the most important, is personal development, interpersonal skills, interpersonal communication skills, digital literacy I talked about earlier, but emotional intelligence, for example. These are the kind of things we need to be putting into our next generation so that they are capable of competing in what is now going to be Africa. We've just signed the AFCFTA. And the resultant effect of that is we're no longer just competing in Nigeria, we're competing across Africa, and by competing across Africa, the rest of the world.
Now, what is the impact of that policy to our technology industry?
I'm hoping that it allows us to create synergies. So I'm very excited, for example, you look at the work someone like Bosun Tijani or CC Hub has been doing with the digital design hub they've just put into Rwanda, Kigali. You're going to expect more of those to happen where we're getting cross-border fertilization of skills and ideas to solve local problems.
And do you think we're ready for such a policy?
No, we're not. We know we're not ready. But again, we're going to keep dogging our policymakers until they do right by us.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for being on the show today.
Pleasure.
My guest has been Tommy Davies, President, Africa Business Angel Network, who is optimistic that startups hold the key to unlocking Nigeria's economic potential. Tommy Davies, or TD as the ecosystem calls him, has been pushing for the establishment of more angel networks across Africa. I'll simply add that if we must truly grow the ecosystem, then we must make early-stage funding of startups a national priority. It's a wrap on this edition of the show, but the conversation continues online. Join us on social media. Remember, you can watch this and the entire show on the Channels TV YouTube account or via my blog, cfablog.ng. For Tech Trends, Chukwemeka Agbata.